Hey, how's it going guys? John here, and today I'm going to be releasing my updated solo next guide. The reason I'm making a new one is to go a bit more in depth with the mechanics so nothing catches you by surprise, as well as including Onslaught since its usefulness has significantly increased since it has been buffed. I'm going to try to keep this video as concise and short as it can possibly be, while covering everything that you need to know, so keep in mind that you can skip to any area of the guide with the table of contents in the description. With that being said, let's quickly go over some information regarding Nyx. She has a combat level of 1001. She has 200,000 total life points, but 40,000 per phase. She gives around 25k experience per kill. Her maximum standard hit is roughly 2.5k as long as you have the correct protection prayer on. As is standard with most bosses, she does not have any particular weakness. The only actual requirement to kill Nyx is a frozen key, which is obtained by combining the 4 individual parts that are dropped by the creatures of the 4 factions of the God Wars dungeon. Another thing that's basically a requirement is a set of Ancient Ceremonial, as it allows you to skip the kill count. For the recommended stats, you're going to want at least level 90 combat stats. You'll also want 95 plus prayer for Anguish, 96 plus Herblore for Overloads, and level 87 summoning for a Shadow Nihil, or level 96 for a Pack-Yak while learning. Before we cover the gear used for the fight, you're going to want a preset like you see on screen now. This will be what you load at the bank as you're heading up to the next bank. Make sure you have all pieces of Ancient Ceremonial, as well as the Shard of Zaros if you've completed the Fate of the Gods quest. In your inventory, you will need your frozen key, and you will want an anti-poison to drink on the way to Nyx. The reason I take the dark bow is just in case I want to start the kill off with 100% adrenaline. For your gear, there's a variety of different setups for different methods, mainly revolving around whether or not you can handle Nyx going into melee distance on you in the Shadow Phase. For the sake of this guide, we'll focus on the Void and Serenic switch setup, which keeps her out of melee distance until you switch armor on Blood Phase. Keep in mind that Nyx can be pretty easily soloed without a gear switch, but I only recommend doing this if you are advanced at Nyx after you've already learned how to do efficient solos. With that being said, you'll want full Superior Elite Void. Unfortunately, only Superior Elite will keep her out of melee distance on the Shadow Phase. You will need to take melee boots, preferably being Bandos. Bandos boots are better to take than Torva because they have less of a negative effect on your ranged accuracy. The other thing to pay attention to is your cape. You will want to bring a hybrid cape like a skill cape if you don't have the max or completionist capes. I recommend either the Reckless Aura or Supreme Sharpshooter. For your scrimshot, you will want a scrimshot of Cruelty or Ranging. For your jewelry, I recommend a Reaper necklace or an Amulet of Souls, and for your ring, either an Asylum Surgeon's ring or a Ring of Death. For your armor switch, you will want full augmented Serenic armor. It definitely doesn't have to be augmented, but the perks really make your solos a lot smoother and easier. The best weapon for this method would be a Saren God bow, but assuming you can't afford it, a Noxious longbow would be your next best option. The perk of the Nox bow is the range for attacking the minions. Ascensions will also do the job fine. Jumping into the inventory, feel free to copy exactly what I have shown on screen now. I highly recommend Supreme Overloads over regular Overloads for soloing Nyx since they raise your stats to 118 instead of 116. Replenishment potions are really convenient compared to Adrenaline potions since your prayer gets drained so much at Nyx, along with Super Prayer Renewals. You'll want 40 magic notepaper in your inventory to loot the brewery store drops since they really do add up. The inventory setup I have on screen now works perfectly for Nihil kills, but feel free to mix and match your brew to rocktail ratio once you get into Nyx, and find out what works best for you. The miscellaneous items which I highly recommend are a Ring of Vigor, Enhanced Excalibur, and a Portent of Life if you have 99 Divination. For your familiar, I recommend a Beast of Burden filled completely with rocktails when you're just learning, and moving up onto a Shadow Nihil once you become comfortable soloing Nyx. With the inventory covered, let's jump right into the fight itself. The first thing you want to do before starting your trip is head to the Glacier Cave with the DKQ Fairy Ring code. You will get a combat boost for around 3 to 6% increased damage while in the God Wars dungeon, lasting for 4 hours. After this, make your way to the next bank and make sure to drink your anti-poison along the way. Once in the next bank, load your main preset and create an instance. Remember that you won't have to make a new instance for every kill, but you will have to bank between each one. All you have to do is click the rejoin button. The reason for this is that Nyx uses deflect curses against you, but the first kill of the instance will never deflect against ranged, and rejoining the instance effectively resets it so you will never encounter the deflect range curse. Remember that the instance will still only last for 1 hour. Once inside the instance, turn your quick prayers on and activate your scrimshaw. Jump down into the boss room and head over to the northwestern minion named Fumus. This will start the smoke phase, being the first of 5 total phases. Sip your adrenaline or replenishment potion, and then target the minion and use the following sequence of abilities. Use Escape, Resonance, Preparation, Freedom, and then Anticipation. Make sure you've sipped your Overload and Renewals, and target Nyx and use Fragmentation Shot and Corruption Shot, followed by Snapshot and Rapid Fire, and then Shadow Tendrils if you have the Adrenaline. Nyx will now charge through one of the 4 available paths in the center of the room. The rest of the phase is pretty simple, just continue to damage her down to 160k life points, and then kill Fumus to move on to Shadow Phase. Remember that Nex can drag you in during this phase, disabling your protection prayers and possibly luring you into the middle. Use Freedom as soon as you can, and eat up while getting out of the middle if you do get dragged in. Don't forget to also reactivate your protection prayers. Shadow Phase is fairly simple as well. The only real thing you need to be aware of are the shadow traps. To start the phase, tag Nex once Fumus is dead. Switch to Soul Split and use Snapshot and then Rapid Fire after you have dodged the first shadow trap. Remember that on this phase her attacks are ranged based, so you'll want to use Deflect range rather than magic. For the rest of the phase, just dodge the shadow traps and continue to damage her down to 120k life points, and then kill the northeastern minion named Umbra. The next phase is the Blood Phase and is usually where most people start having issues with their next solos. At this point you're going to put on your Cernic switch, although I would wait until Ice Phase if you don't have perks on it. There's a couple of different ways to complete Blood Phase, mainly depending on whether or not you have the Onslaught ability. I highly recommend you have Onslaught since it makes this phase so much easier and much more relaxed, but we'll cover 2 ways to do it. Before we go over them, there's a few things you should know about Blood Phase in general. Don't use any bleed abilities during this phase since they will heal Nex instead of harming her, and also do not attack her while she is performing her siphon since all damage dealt during it will heal her as well. First off, we'll cover what I did before the Onslaught buff, and the method I used for hundreds of souls that got blood done on the first siphon almost every single time. Keep in mind that there is a better, more advanced way to do it without Onslaught that involves pre-phasing, but it's a lot harder to do and in my experience only leads to slightly faster kills, not necessarily more consistent blood phases. Quickly just remember that whenever I say Dazing Shot, simply replace it with Needle Strike if you're using dual-wielded weapons. With that being said, my method is to tag Nex and use Death Swiftness. Sip your Adrenaline Potion, and you will now want to use Freedom, Anticipation, Provoke, and Snipe during the opening siphon. Now you will want to use Rapid Fire, Snapshot, and Dazing Shot. At this point, Nex will attempt to sacrifice you, indicated by your character turning red. Use the escape ability to get out of its range, and run back into your Death Swiftness and finish off the rest of her remaining life points, using thresholds like Bombardment and Shadow Tendrils, as well as your highest damage dealing basics like Snipe and Dazing Shot. Once you get a feel for this rotation and gain some experience at Nex, you should be able to get this done all in one siphon. However, if you don't manage to finish it before the siphon, Nex will kill the Blood Reavers and heal the sum of their remaining life points. This can quickly get out of hand and become a very uphill battle. Your goal is to avoid this, but sometimes RNG can really work against you, and you end up missing a lot of your abilities. With that being said, you shouldn't give up after just 1 or 2 siphons, as you definitely can come back from it. You just need to be calm and focused on not making mistakes and panicking. Now jumping into the Onslaught method, it's much more simple and pretty much guarantees you get it before the siphon every single kill. You will want to finish off Fumus and pre-phase Snapshot Nex. This is done by clicking Nex, and as soon as you see the auto attack animation going off, use Snapshot as quickly as you can. After the Snapshot, use Anticipation and get into melee distance to Nex so that she doesn't break your Onslaught. Right when you see Nex's wings rise up, use Snipe. You should now have 100% Adrenaline. As soon as the siphon ends, Snipe will hit and you should start your Onslaught. I recommend using your Enhanced Excalibur at this point. You will still want to watch out for the sacrifice, but the majority of the time the phase is already done by then. If it isn't, just finish her off using basics. To move on to the next phase, head over to the southeastern minion named Cruor and kill him. Ice Phase is another challenging phase. Nex uses 2 different specials on this phase, the Contain and the Ice Prison. You will want to always start Ice Phase with a Contain. This can be achieved by waiting until the Sacrifice from Blood Phase happens before tagging Nex into Ice Phase. An easy way to know this has happened is just waiting until you see your character has turned red before tagging her. The Contain will stun you if you are too close to Nex, and deactivate your protection pairs, which can become very dangerous, so you'll want to keep your distance when you know it's the next special. You'll want to cycle through your bleeds and thresholds during this phase, but I recommend keeping your life points high in preparation for the prison. The Ice Prison will also stun and deactivate your protection pairs, as well as make you unable to attack Nex. You can still use defensives, however, so you'll want to either anticipate just before the prison happens, or use Freedom once you are in it. Make sure you eat up to full HP since the prison can hit between 6 to 8k damage. One trick that can be used to your advantage is to use Resonance right as the prison breaks to receive a heal from Nex's attacks just as it ends. I recommend that you don't use Barricade or Immortality against a prison, since you lose all of your adrenaline that can be more efficiently spent on finishing the phase off. Once Nex reaches 40k life points, kill the last remaining minion named Glacies, located in the southwest corner. The 5th and final phase is the Zaros Phase. This phase is actually pretty easy in comparison to the previous 2 phases. Nex becomes a lot stronger and a lot more accurate during this phase, and gains a defensive buff which reduces the damage of your abilities. She will also use Soul Split during this phase and end up healing a lot of life points back. This phase is just really a DPS test. There's a few different ways to approach this phase. You can either use Death Swiftness in the beginning and DPS as usual, or use Thresholds in the Deadshot ultimate to finish the kill. Both methods work fine, so I'll leave it up to you guys to just use whatever you personally feel more comfortable with. Remember that bleeds will help massively during this phase. Also remember to keep your life points above roughly 3,000 to be sure that you don't die in this phase since she hits so hard. This should cover everything you need to know to effectively solo Nyx. It's one of the harder PVM experiences in the game, but it's extremely rewarding and great money while also having some fun. I hope this guide helps you guys out, and if you did enjoy, I'd really appreciate it if you could drop a like and subscribe for future videos. Also make sure to check out my Twitch channel since I stream 6 days a week, and interacting with you guys live is a ton of fun. Thanks for watching and good luck guys.